You've been told to confront your enemies head-on, to fight honorably. To turn the other cheek. That's a comforting lie, told by the weak to keep the strong in check. In the real game of power, open battles are for amateurs. True masters of strategy don't just defeat their rivals. They turn them into unwitting pawns in their own rise to power. They know direct confrontation is a fool's game that only creates more enemies and burns bridges. The greatest victory is the one where your enemy doesn't even realize they're losing until it's already over. The weak attack their enemies. The strong make them destroy themselves. Today, you'll learn 3 timeless rules, inspired by the Machiavellian mind, for not just neutralizing your enemies, but strategically using them to your advantage. We're going to explore the cold-blooded genius of Niccolò Machiavelli, not as a teacher of evil, but as a stone-cold realist who saw the world for what it is. He understood that to win and hold power, you sometimes have to turn your back on conventional morality. Stay until the end, and you'll start to see the world not as you wish it were, but as it actually is. You'll learn to move beyond brute force and master the sophisticated tactics of history's greatest strategists. The problem, the inevitability of rivals. Here's a truth few are willing to accept. Rivals aren't an anomaly. They're a constant. In business, in politics, and even in your social life, you will always have enemies. They are an inevitable consequence of ambition. The moment you decide to rise, to achieve anything more than mediocrity, you create opposition. There will always be people who envy your talent, fear your progress, or simply want what you have. The modern world, with its corporate ladders and social hierarchies, is an arena. Every day, you're surrounded by competitors. Some are obvious, but many are disguised as colleagues, or even friends. They might smile to your face while quietly taking credit for your ideas or subtly undermining your authority. You might find yourself working harder and producing more, yet watching others with less merit get ahead. This isn't a failure of your effort. It's a failure of your strategy. The common response is one of 2 mistakes. First, there's naive kindnessy belief that if you're just fair, agreeable, and non-confrontational, your enemies will see the light and back down. This is the morality of the herd, a system designed to keep you compliant and easy to manage. Machiavelli would call this a fatal error. He observed that men are generally ungrateful, voluble, dissemblers, anxious to avoid danger, and covetous of gain. Your kindness will be seen as weakness, and it will be exploited. The second mistake is raw, emotional confrontation. You lash out, you argue, you declare open war. This is just as foolish. Every move you make in anger is a weapon you hand to your opponent. It reveals your intentions, burns your resources, and solidifies their alliances against you. Open battles are clumsy and costly, and they give your enemies a clear target. Both paths lead to ruin. One makes you a sheep, the other a predictable bull. Neither makes you a master. This is the problem Machiavelli's philosophy addresses. It doesn't offer a path to a world without enemies. It offers a path to a world where your enemies, far from being your downfall, become the very instruments of your success. The solution. The Machiavellian mindset. To understand these rules, you first have to shed the caricature of Machiavelli as some promoter of pure evil. He was a political philosopher and diplomat in Renaissance Italy, a time of intense political chaos, shifting alliances, and constant war. His writings, especially The Prince, weren't abstract moral lectures. They were pragmatic guides for leaders on how to gain and keep power in a dangerous world. He was a realist. He didn't ask what was morally right in a vacuum. He asked what was effective. He understood that a leader who strictly follows virtues of humility and forgiveness in a world of wolves won't just fail, they'll bring ruin to their entire state. For Machiavelli, the highest good wasn't personal piety. It was the stability and security of the state. And to achieve that, a leader must be willing to act outside conventional morality when necessary. He famously argued that it's safer for a ruler to be feared than loved, if you have to choose. Love he reasoned, is held by a flimsy chain of obligation which men, being selfish, will break whenever it suits them. Fear, however, is held by a dread of punishment that never fails. But he also cautioned against being hated, which only breeds rebellion. This isn't an endorsement of cruelty, but a cold calculation of human nature. Fear is simply a more reliable tool than fickle affection. So, how can we distill his complex philosophy into a practical guide? This brings us to 3 golden rules, drawn from the Machiavellian mindset. These aren't simple tricks. They're a sophisticated system of psychological warfare designed to give you an absolute advantage. The core idea is this: stop seeing your enemies as a problem to be eliminated, and start seeing them as an asset to be managed and exploited. Their predictable hatred, their ego, their weaknesses, these are all levers you can pull. Rule 1. Use your enemies as assets. The first and most fundamental shift in perspective is this: don't fear your enemies. Usi, Tim. While friends might flatter you, an enemy's malice is pure. It's honest. An enemy will point out your weaknesses with more clarity than any advisor. They will test your resolve, sharpen your strategy, and force you to become stronger and smarter. Machiavelli saw enemies as not just inevitable, but invaluable. First, your enemies are a source of brutally honest feedback. A rival at work who constantly criticizes your presentations is giving you free quality control. While their intent is to undermine you, their critics, if you're wise enough to listen without emotion, reveal every flaw in your argument. They show you exactly where you must improve. A wise leader doesn't dismiss an enemy's insults. They study them. While your friends tell you what you want to hear, your enemies tell you what you need to hear. Think about the corporate world. A rival company launches a smear campaign against your product, highlighting a defect. The emotional response is to deny and counterattack. The Machiavellian response is to quietly thank them for the free market research. They've just spent their own money to identify your greatest vulnerability. Now you can fix it. While they're celebrating a perceived win, you're re-engineering your product. By the time you relaunch, their criticism is not only invalid, it makes them look out of date. Second, your enemies are a tool for forging discipline. The instinct when provoked is to react, to get angry, to defend your ego. That's per fool's reflex. Every emotional outburst tells your opponent they've hit a nerve. Machiavelli and other great strategists teach that you must master your emotions. When an enemy insults you and you respond with cold, detached silence, you create an aura of unshakable power. They expect a fight. You give them nothing. This ambiguity is terrifying. They're swinging its shadows while you observe, collect data, and wait for the perfect moment. Third, the presence of a clear enemy is a powerful tool for unifying your own allies. Nothing brings a group together like a common adversary. A wise leader knows how to frame a rival not as a personal vendetta, but as a threat to the entire group. By focusing your team's energy outward, you prevent internal squabbling and create a sense of shared purpose. Your enemy, without ever intending it, becomes the architect of your team's cohesion. This is the first rule in practice. It's a complete reframing of conflict. Enemies aren't liabilities. They are opportunities. Their hatred is a spotlight on your weaknesses. Their aggression is a catalyst for your growth, and their predictability is the key to their own demise. Rule 2. Divide and conquer by elevating one enemy once you see enemies as assets. You must learn to dismantle their coalitions without declaring war. A direct assault on a unified group is dangerous. A far more elegant strategy is to destroy their alliances from within. As Machiavelli wrote in The Art of War, a captain should do everything he can to divide the enemy's forces. The fastest way to break a group of rivals is to turn their own ego into the weapon of their destruction. The second rule is this: isolate your enemies by subtly elevating one of them above the others. Here's how it works. Within any group of rivals, there's almost always one who is more vocal, more ambitious, or more desperate for the spotlight. This person is your target. You're not going to attack them. You're going to promote them. The process is surgical. In a group meeting, when your target makes a point, single them out. That's an interesting perspective, you might say, ignoring their allies. You've clearly given this a lot of thought. This small act does two things at once. It feeds your target's ego and plants a seed of resentment in the minds of their allies. Why is he getting all the credit? Are my ideas not valuable? You can amplify this by creating a false sense of a special relationship. You might pull them aside to confidentially share a minor piece of information. You're giving them the illusion of special access, making them feel superior. They begin to see themselves not as part of a team, but as the sole worthy adversary. As their ego inflates, their behavior changes. They become more demanding. They start speaking for the group without consulting them. Their allies, who once saw them as a partner, now see them as an arrogant liability. The alliance fractures. They're so busy fighting each other that they have no energy left to fight you. Now, your target stands alone, abandoned by their allies, and this is when you strike. An attack on them is no longer an attack on the group. It's an attack on a lone, overextended individual whom no one will defend. This strategy is pure Machiavellian genius. It requires patience and a deep understanding of human vanity. You don't fight a messy battle. You act as a catalyst and create the conditions for your enemies to destroy themselves. You give them just enough rope, and their own ego will gladly do the hanging. Rule 3. Convert the weakest enemy into an informant. If the second rule weaponizes the ego of the strongest enemy, this final rule exploits the insecurity of the weakest. Ti strategi, a logical extension of Machiavelli's belief in using deception, is about cultivating an enemy into an informant. Within any hostile group, there's always someone who feels overlooked or undervalued. This person can become your greatest strategic asset. This is the art of turning an enemy into a spy. It requires a form of strategic kindness. You're not trying to win a friend. You're cultivating a source. First, you identify your target. Observe the group dynamics. Who is always spoken over? Who seems to agree with the group, but without any real enthusiasm? This is the person whose insecurities the crack in the wall of their loyalty. Next is the approach. It must be subtle. Don't offer a direct deal. Instead, you offer validation. Let's say you catch them after a meeting where their idea was dismissed. You might say, "I thought your point about the logistics was incredibly insightful. It's a shame it got lost in the noise." With that one sentence, you've positioned yourself as someone who recognizes their true worth. You continue this campaign of subtle validation over time. You ask for their opinion on minor matters. You compliment their work. You're not asking them to betray their friends. You're simply building a rapport based on the one thing they crave but aren't receiving from their own side: respect. Soon, they'll start volunteering information. They might say, "The team is planning to challenge your budget proposal. The main line of attack will be X." They don't think of it as betrayal. They think they're having a strategic discussion with someone who values their input. Now you have a window into your enemy's camp. You know their plans in advance. You can prepare your defenses and even use this channel to plant misinformation. You might tell your informant, "I'm really worried about our market share in the East," knowing your position there is ironclad. You're directing your enemies to waste their resources attacking a fortress while you advance on another front. Spy masters throughout history have known that the most reliable informants aren't those who are paid, but those who are psychologically cultivated. This rule is the epitome of subtle power. It's warfare conducted through the performance of empathy. You're not crushing your enemies. You're poaching them, dismantling their organization from the inside out. It's quiet, clean, and devastatingly effective. The master of the game, these 3 rules inspired by Machiavelli, are not just separate tactics. They are a unified system for dominating in a world of conflict. First, you reframe your enemies. They cease to be obstacles and become a source of intelligence, a catalyst for discipline, and a tool for building your own strength. Second, you dismantled their alliances without a fight. You weaponized the ego of the loudest among them, becoming the quiet orchestrator of their implosion. Third, you exploit the insecurity of the weakest, turning a minor opponent into your most valuable source of intelligence through the strategic application of validation. When you master these rules, you're no longer just a player in the game of power. You become the master of the game. You move through conflict not with brute force, but with the quiet, untouchable grace of a predator. Your intentions are concealed, and you let your enemies defeat themselves. This is the brutal truth of power that Machiavelli dared to write. It's a philosophy for those who understand that in the arenas of business, politics, and life, you either play the game with ruthless intelligence or you become a pawn for those who do. The choice is yours. Live in the world as you wish it were, or master it as it is. If these strategies have sharpened your mind for the world as it is, subscribe for more unfiltered insights into the nature of power. Have you ever witnessed one of these rules in action? Share your story in the comments below. In this arena we learn from every battle. And remember, the greatest victories are never won in the open. They are won long before, in silence, by the one who saw the whole board.